Hello again. Today we're going to upgrade the Volkswagen EOS stereo. We're upgrading it from this one to this one up here, which has an SD slot and it's also going to have a USB port as well. This could be a similar job that you could do in other Volkswagens such as a Golf or a Jetta or even some Audis. The common problem with this could be a battery drainage, so if we come across that problem, hopefully we'll take a look at that later. The first thing you need to do is take this silver trim off. Don't worry too much about this Bluetooth parrot thing on the side here. You probably won't have one of these. It's not great, just ignore it. Alright, so I'm just using a knife to get this plastic off. You have to be very careful not to scratch the plastic. Should just pop out nicely. Right, now's the last chance to get any CDs out of your player, because once it's all unplugged you won't be able to get them out, so just double check that you haven't got any CDs in there. Right, what you need to do is unscrew these screws around the outside. They are a torque 20, so we just need to get those out. It's as simple as that. The thing should now just slide out. Which it does. So we have some connectors that we need to take off from the back. This one here we have to pinch and just pull it up, and then that should come out. We have two smaller ones here where there's also just a pinch and a pull, and they'll come out. So there we have it, it's out. We've noticed that the FM antennas on the two stereos are different. With this one they are wider apart and obviously the two sockets and could fit on, whereas here they're closer together, which means that although we can get one of these on there, the other one would not fit. So we're going to have to trim a bit off so that they could hopefully both fit on there. So we managed to break a piece off the end of this socket here, then we managed to put both of these on. It was a really tight squeeze. Hopefully we didn't break a pin inside and it's not going to blow up.
Okay.
What we're going to do now is clip in our USB port, which is going to sit nicely underneath our stereo. There we are. We want the USB to fit in down here. Eventually we're going to have to cut out a nice slot for it to fit into, but for now I'm just going to take one of these out for it to go into for now. In order to thread the USB through, I've decided that this whole piece will have to come out. And we have some torque screws to unscrew as well. will just lift. Close that first, it's helpful. There we go.
All the way out. That's enough.
There we go. Finally, after much fiddling, we've got the piece out which we want to go up through here. It's a very fiddly job. Which now we want to do is put it back. And to put the screws back in where they came from. Make sure that this bit underneath is clipped in properly first, otherwise you have some trouble putting this top bit in afterwards. There we go, clipped in. Tidy. Now it's time to put the stereo in. We're going to have to put this last piece into the back here, making sure that our lever is up first. We need to pop this back inside like so. Be careful not to pinch any of the other wires. I think maybe the lever's not up enough. There we are. We're going a bit more. So, lever's down. Pop that in. Now all we need to do is put the screws back in to hold it in place. But before we do screw it in place, I think it'd be a good idea to test that it works first, because otherwise we'll have to undo everything again. Please enter code, which I remember to write down first. If you don't have the code, it won't work. It's making a noise, which is good. Let's see. So we've tested it. I'm really happy with it. It plays MP3 CDs. I've got the USB, so it's playing from the memory stick. We have the SD slot here. It just works really well. I'm really happy with it. So we put the screws back in here, and all we have to do now is just put the casing on back around the outside. Just be careful when putting that wire in there. Don't want to chop it. It just snaps on. I had to take this thing off because it was right in front of the power button there, and it was just in the way, so we had to take that off. But now there we go, nice and tidy, all clipped back in. Next thing we need to look into is the battery drainage problem, and that's what we're just going to try and test out now. But I've read that the problem with the drainage of the battery is to do with the CAN bus, which is like a USB between all the different parts of the computer of the car. I've heard that the solution to the problem is something called a CAN bus gateway, which fits in behind the stereo. Then after the gateway is in, it would need reprogramming, which sounds like crazy magic to me. Another solution that I read about was modifying the fuse box, which sounds a bit more practical to me than having to reprogram the whole car using a gateway. So I think that the battery drainage problem is caused when the stereo doesn't realise that the car has been switched off. So what I've been doing is testing, turning the car on and off. Just taking out the ignition, putting it back in again. As you can see, that the Volkswagen sign comes on, so it recognises that the key's in ignition and it starts up again. So the stereo has been switching on and off. So really I don't think that I have a battery problem here. But I am going to double check. Looking in the manual, we found out that the fuse box is not the one under the dash, but the one under the bonnet. But what I need to do now is match which one of these my car has. The fuse number for the radio is either F8 or F18, or if it's the other fuse box, that'll be F18 or F19. Here we've located the fuse box. I like that we've got a little picture on the top there. Just know we'll have to pull these clips back and that will just lift off. Here we go. Looking at the diagram here, I believe we have this one, so we are looking at the fuse F8 or F18. Looking in the fuse box here, our F18 isn't actually located in here, it's not there, so it has to be here where we have F8, and this is the one that we're looking at, and the numbers are just written down the side here on the inside to make sure that we're looking at the right one. I'm going to test this fuse here by taking it out, and hopefully if I take that out that means that the stereo has switched off. Is it off?
It's off.
And hopefully then when I put it back in, we'll know that the stereo comes back on.
It's come back on.
There we go. What I have here is a multimeter which I'm going to use to check the current of the stereo. So I've set it here to measure the amps. You might need some help when doing this. That goes in there, that goes in there. It's using about 700 milliamps at the moment. Just turned the volume up a little bit, so now it's reading about 1 amp. Now going to take the key out of the ignition just to see then how low this will then go down to. So it's reading less than half an amp, 0.5. That seems a little bit too high, so that may mean that I actually do have a battery problem. Well, my battery is a 63 amp battery, and because my stereo is draining about half an amp, that means that it'll run on that about 120 or so hours without the battery going flat. But that does mean that if I was to leave my car for about a week, I will end up with a flat battery, which isn't helpful at all.